Hey everyone, this is a response video to the Bikes and Beards Cheap Bike Challenge that was recently published.
This video was brought to you by the Sea Cilantro, the only vehicle that 90% of society is not allergic to.
If you don't know what Bikes and Beards is, it's one of the most popular channels on YouTube that feature motorcycles. In this video, I'm going to explore whether the K1200RS got a fair shot against those other bikes. Now, a little background on myself. I worked at two BMW shops and one of them had a dyno. I would have loved to see that bike on a dyno, but I never did. Now, when I first saw the K1200RS in question on their video, the first thing I noticed was the grips. The grips were not OEM. So when he started complaining about the throttle not actually springing back, I was not surprised. I've seen aftermarket grips that were so sticky that you shouldn't even have them on the bike. You should never ride a bike with a throttle that doesn't spring back immediately. Oh no, this one's not connected.
It's a little sticky.
I mean, in the old days, some of the Harleys, you actually had to push forward with the throttle. So, you know, each to their own, but you shouldn't really be riding a modern bike that doesn't have a throttle that springs forward. It's a safety feature.
Or because the kickstand.
No, because the kickstand's there.
I hate BMWs.
Also, Craig, it's a safety feature that when you have the kickstand down, the bike stops, at least on the BMWs.
They claim that they couldn't get my throttle to go all the way, that it was only at like 60% throttle.
I heard the guy had gone through the bike, lubed everything and all that kind of stuff, and it could be that he sprayed lube down the throttle cable. On BMWs of that era, I believe they had a paper sleeve on the throttle cable, and if you sprayed anything in there, it would dissolve the paper and it wouldn't slip anymore. The fuel mileage contest had me squirming in my seat, frankly, because the K1200RS is EFI. So it's got the fuel pump inside the gas tank, and the gas is actually the coolant for the fuel pump. Now, I knew the BMW would win that contest. Even though it's got bigger displacement, it's a heavier bike, I just knew it would win the contest. But you don't want to be running your BMW out of fuel, or any bike that has the fuel pump in the fuel tank. The gasoline is the coolant. So if you see the fuel light come on, get to the nearest gas station or get some fuel in it any way you can, because you don't want to run out of fuel. I have run BMWs out of fuel completely, and I have put the gas back in and they have started back up, but I kind of feel like the fuel pump probably got damaged from the situation and possibly wouldn't have lasted as long as it could have. One of the weird things that I couldn't figure out about the video was when Craig thought the bike had carburetors.
Who? Craig, are these CV carbs? So
those K bikes have been electronic fuel injection for a long, long time. In fact, its predecessor, the K75, can be seen in the movie Dragnet, ridden by Tom Hanks, and that bike was EFI. So they've always been like that. The K bikes have always been electronic fuel injected. They have throttle bodies, not carburetors. Now, I realize that video was for entertainment purposes and a lot of it was just for laughs. And when Craig said there were carburetors on the bike, it may have been a joke or he may have been taken out of context. BMW and a lot of other motorcycle manufacturers will quote you a horsepower rating that is measured at the crank. That means that it's right at the back of the engine, right before the clutch. That would be right about here. I have noticed that Bikes and Beards changes their thumbnails every once in a while, but one thumbnail showed an arrow pointing to the BMW K1200RS and it said scam. Now, I don't think so. I don't think he got scammed. Now, it didn't have OEM grips on the bike, and obviously there was something wrong with the throttle, and the back brake was also not functioning well. It probably needed a flush. Now, I'll tell you something about the BMW ABS. You don't have to have ABS. The guy resetting the ABS, hey, it doesn't matter. You can ride a BMW with no ABS. If it has an ABS fault, then there's no problem. They did introduce a servo assisted brake system, and if the pump, the ABS pump slash brake pump goes out, then you lose that servo assist power brake thing that they made, and you will have what BMW termed as residual braking. Residual braking is not as bad as people made it out to be. You just have to pull a lot harder than you would if you didn't have that, and maybe a little harder than you would on a BMW with no power assisted brakes. So there is some pressure behind it, even though the pump's not running. But it is possible. I have done it before. I've also ridden bikes that had no ABS. You don't have to reset the ABS. You don't need ABS to have braking, and you don't need the power assisted brake pump to be working to have braking at all either. On the highway, it works just fine. When you're going at slow speeds, or if you're in your driveway or something and you're not used to it, it may be a concern. If the pump goes out while you're riding, it may be a concern for a few seconds till you figure out that you just lost the power on the brakes. Then you'll have to pull a little harder. I mean, it works. I've done it before. It's really not as bad as people say. Now, do I like it? No, it's really, I don't like having to flush the ABS system on those bikes because it takes so many steps and you have to use special tools to do it. So it's really a headache. With the more modern bikes, they eliminated that. So, you know, each to their own. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I don't know if anybody really liked it. It's just we had to live with it for several years until they changed their mind and took it out. Apparently, according to Chris Harris, BMW put that on there 2 years before they put it on the BMW cars. I have no idea if it's still on BMW cars. I would kind of doubt it. But I think most modern cars do have power brakes, you know, power assisted or servo assisted brakes. The thing about it being on a motorcycle is that it made a lot of noise. On a car, you can kind of hide the noise. You just put the pump somewhere in the car where you're not going to hear it. But on a motorcycle, I mean, where are you going to put that noise? And I was kind of surprised when I got on a hex head motorbike and it had no power brake on it anymore, and the brakes seemed, you know, I felt like, oh, this is probably going to have the power brake system. And when I pulled the brakes, there was no sound at all, and I was just like, how'd they do that? How'd they make it silent? And then I found out it had no power brake pump, so it's not going to make any noise. It's just a brake system. And I've never really had any problem with the BMW brake systems. I feel like BMW has always been on the cutting edge of brake systems. They've most of the time they've had Brembo for years. I think maybe, oh man, it went way back. Maybe, I know it was in the 80s. They had Brembo brakes on the K bikes and possibly on the Rs. They went away from Brembo a little bit for a while. I mean, there was the servo assisted brake where the caliper actually says BMW, but if you look on the back of that brake, it does have a Brembo symbol, and it does take Brembo pads or Brembo compatible pads. So it is a Brembo system, or at least the calipers were. Now, later on, they went to, I don't remember what the ones were. Might have been Nissan for a while. I don't remember. And then there was a US company, and that one was short-lived. They went with them for a little while. I think they went back to Brembo recently. So, you know, it's just, it is what it is. Every bike has its little quirks. We just have to be aware of that. The inline 4 that BMW used in the K1200RS would be very familiar to people that worked on inline 6s from, say, a Japanese car or something. They look almost identical. They have the cams, and then underneath the cams they have the shims and buckets. Very familiar stuff. BMWs have never been well known for a lot of horsepower or speed, but in 2015 they actually did have the fastest street bike in production. These days some of their fastest bikes are 200 horsepower, and they're only 900 cc's.
Your bike might surprise all of ours. It is the biggest displacement bike.
That bike was originally said to have 130 horsepower. BMW will tell you at the crank what the horsepower is. So I would think that at the rear wheel, that bike would probably be maybe 123. That's just my guess. I don't know. If anybody dynos one, please let me know. That would be really cool to find out.
We're taking these bikes 98%. The cleanest version of these bikes of what they could be.
In the video, when they dyno the bike, they say that the throttle didn't give them more than maybe 60%. Now, they said, well, those are the dice you throw. You have to play the cards as you're dealt, that kind of thing. But really, I mean, if you want to give everybody a fair shot, you should make sure all bikes can go ahead and go through all the pulls on the dyno. I do want to say I enjoyed watching both of those videos, and I hope that Bikes and Beards does more of those videos in the future, maybe during a season where they can actually ride the bikes. I'd really like to see what kind of things happen to the bikes as they were journeying, because that's the whole point of a cheap bike challenge in most cases. I understand it was winter time and they had limited time with Craig there, that kind of thing. So hopefully they can get some time and actually do a challenge like they did before, where they actually ride for a while. The parts coming off of the GV case, that was kind of concerning at first because I thought it was parts coming off of the BMW, but then when I saw it was the GV case, I went, that's aftermarket. But yeah, if the bike's not looked after, maybe the parts would come off if somebody was in there and then forgot to put some screws into the fairings or something. I don't know. Anything can happen. And that's the idea, is you take a ride and you see what happens. If people break down, then you try to fix it. I'm glad to see that you guys have chase cars, because I wouldn't try that kind of thing without anybody following me with gas like you guys have, and maybe some wrenches and stuff. I'm sure Craig had a toolkit with him, maybe in the van, maybe on the bike, I don't know. But anyway, it was enjoyable, and I hope to see more. Thanks for watching my video. I hope you had some good information from this video, and I'll see you in future videos, hopefully. Or maybe I won't see you, because videos do not have eyes. I'm gonna go pull the thorns out of my arm. Have a great day. Now I realize that video was probably for, He may have been joking. The fuel consumption contest really had me squirming in my seat. The K1200RS has a fuel pump in the fuel tank. Let me try that again. I actually heard a rumor from somebody that there was some kind of European agreement where they couldn't have a top speed that was very high or something at that time. Hey everyone, this is a video response to the Bikes and Beards video.